You gave them every chance to win. If you look at this in slow motion, you can see Caitlin Clark clearly smiling in confusion, smiling in, did that really just happen? Smiling in, you sly W. And she says, she points at the other team, you gave them every chance to win. Oh, goodness gracious. Caitlin Clark, she's chomping at the bits to start talking to these referees.
Picture this. You're watching what should be a routine WNBA game between the Indiana Fever and LA Sparks. The score is tight, 76-75. Emotions are running high. Then suddenly you see Caitlin Clark, the face of women's basketball, sitting injured on the sideline, absolutely losing her mind. She's on her feet, screaming at the referees, pointing frantically. Her face.
This is kind of where everything started at with Sydney Colson. So this is the timeline here. Let me get this pulled up here. This is interesting. I didn't know she said all that today. Okay, this is interesting here. She started off last night by saying at a certain point in the league's existence, I'm going to need for Kelsey Mitchell to get the same whistle as each other stars. The way she gets assaulted is insane, actually. And I've considered roping my sister in it to have office purse charges.
Twisted in pure disbelief. And in that moment, she says something that cuts through all the noise. You gave them every chance to win. Those 7 words have just exposed what might be the biggest scandal in WNBA history. What happened in those final moments wasn't just bad officiating. It was something far more sinister. And when Sydney Colson, one of the most beloved players in the league, grabbed her phone after watching this disaster unfold and fired off a tweet that sent shockwaves through the basketball world.
Who you betting on? And mind you, there was some problems going on with the shot clock throughout the game. But man, there is no way. Right at the end of the game, you should be on top of it. You telling me you're not paying attention to when some hands touch that ball? Come on, man. And then to reward them with the timeout, like, fam, that's crazy work. Look, Caitlin Clark, like, what is going on here? She's like, no. Look,
She didn't just criticize the refs. She threatened to bring in lawyers. This isn't your typical post-game complaints about missed calls. This is 2 of the WNBA's biggest stars basically accusing the league of rigging games, and they have the receipts to prove it. The timeline of this explosive controversy begins with what should have been a celebration. The Indiana Fever had just squeezed out a heart-stopping 76-75 victory over the Los Angeles Sparks. But instead of champagne and high fives in the locker room, the conversation wasn't about the win at all. It was about the absolute circus of officiating that nearly stole their victory.
We definitely have to check for betting slips for this guy right here. I think his name is like Agun Agazi, because it sure seemed like he did not want to let the Fever take away this win, making the last 1.9 seconds last almost 5 minutes. He was just like letting them call a reset timeout, and then he was like, no, it's a foul. But I think the worst part about that 1.9 seconds was when 0.4 seconds was left on the clock, and Kelsey Mitchell was at the free throw line. She was trying to miss on purpose because that takes time off of the clock, because if she would have made it in, they would have been able to inbound and possibly do a tip in. But this guy allowed a reset timeout
right from under their noses. And Sydney Colson, watching from her living room while recovering from a torn ACL, had seen enough of this madness to last a lifetime. Within hours of the final buzzer, Coulson unleashed a Twitter storm that would make your head spin. At a certain point in the league's existence, I'm going to need Kelsey Mitchell to get the same whistle as other stars, she wrote. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. She didn't stop there. The way she gets assaulted is insane, actually, and I've considered roping my sister in to have her office pursue charges. Hold up. Did she just threaten to press actual criminal charges against opposing players for what's happening?
Like, it didn't really matter what was going on. We all knew what was happening. We all knew what was happening there. And the game was being given. The game was absolutely being given to the Sparks. They were giving the Sparks every single chance possible to go and win that game. Even though realistically, did they deserve to win that game? Hell no. Hell no. They did not. And I mean
basketball court? Yes, she did. And that tells you everything you need to know about how far this has gone. But before we dive into the social media explosion, let's rewind and talk about what actually happened during this game that had everyone seeing red. We're talking about the second quarter, and Kelsey Mitchell, Indiana's other scoring machine alongside Clark, is doing what she does best, attacking the rim with relentless aggression. She beats her defender clean. She's got a clear path to the basket, and then it happens. In full view of everyone in the arena.
She is the type of person that just like goes through a lot of defenders, and she wasn't getting a call. This really was not her game. She was not hitting it from the three whatsoever, but everyone is entitled to having a bad game here and there, and I think she was kind of due for one because of the tear that she's been on lately. Even Sid Coulson took to Twitter to talk about it, saying, at a certain point in the league's existence, I'm gonna need Kelsey Mitchell to get the same whistle as other stars. The way she gets assaulted is insane.
She gets grabbed and yanked mid-drive like she's in some kind of street fight, not a professional basketball game. Now, when I say grabbed and yanked, I'm not talking about some light contact or incidental bump. This was a full-on WWE-style takedown that had people in the nosebleed seats jumping out of their chairs expecting to hear a whistle. But here's the kicker. The referees? Complete silence. They swallowed that whistle like it was their last meal. Mitchell, tough as nails, somehow still managed to finish the layup, but the damage was done. The Fever bench went absolutely ballistic, and you could see in their faces that this wasn't just frustration. It was the breaking point after months of this treatment. And then we get to the final 1.9 seconds of the game, which somehow lasted nearly 5 minutes of real time. Picture this insanity. Kelsey Mitchell is at the free throw line with 4 seconds left on the clock, and she's actually trying to miss on purpose because that would run down the clock and seal the victory for Indiana. It's a smart basketball play that happens all the time. But then one referee, and fans have been calling out this particular official all season long, decides to allow a reset timeout. With 4 seconds left, when does that ever happen in crunch time? This is where Caitlin Clark, who's been forced to watch this travesty unfold from the bench due to her own injury, finally reaches her breaking point. She explodes off that bench like a rocket, screaming, "Call it! Call it!" at the top of her lungs, her arms flailing, her entire body language screaming disbelief at what she's witnessing. And here's where the corruption gets so obvious it's almost comical. Lexi Hall, Clark's teammate, also gets fired up about this obvious injustice. So what do the refs do? They hit Hall with a technical foul. Let me break down this backwards justice for you. The player who got fouled gets nothing. The player who committed the foul gets to keep playing like nothing happened. And the teammate who dared to be upset about this injustice, she gets punished. If you're looking for a textbook example of a rigged system, you just found it. This wasn't officiating, this was theater, and everybody in that arena knew exactly what they were watching. Sydney Colson, watching this unfold from her couch at home, couldn't stomach it anymore. Remember, this is a player who's beloved throughout the league, someone who usually keeps things light and funny on social media. But when she saw what happened to her teammate, Kelsey Mitchell, something inside her snapped. Her viral tweet wasn't just venting frustration. It was a calculated expose of months of systematic targeting that she'd witnessed firsthand as a member of the Fever. The numbers don't lie, and they paint a horrifying picture of what's really been happening to Indiana players all season long. Mitchell drove to the basket repeatedly against the Sparks, absorbing contact that would have other players camping out at the free throw line. But somehow, someway, she only got 2 free throw attempts the entire game. 2. Meanwhile, other protected stars around the league get whistles, just for existing in the same zip code as a defender. But Coulson's tweet hit social media like a nuclear bomb, and within hours, it was racking up thousands of shares and retweets. Fans weren't just agreeing. They were saying, finally, someone said it. For months, Fever supporters have been screaming about this exact pattern, and now they had validation from someone on the inside. The tweet represented something bigger than one bad game. It was the voice of accumulated frustration from an entire organization that's been getting worked over by officials night after night. That's when Caitlin Clark decided to add her own perfect touch to this controversy. Her response was short, sharp, and loaded with sarcasm. Careful, you're going to get fined. 6 words that said absolutely everything about the toxic culture the WNBA has created. Because Clark knows better than anyone that this league has a very simple policy. You can get hammered on the court, ignored by officials, and sabotaged by phantom calls. But the second you dare to call it out publicly, they come for your wallet. And Clark wasn't exaggerating even a little bit. Just ask Sophie Cunningham, who's become the poster child for what happens when you speak the truth about WNBA officiating. Cunningham has been fined not once, not twice, but 3 separate times this season for having the audacity to question referee competence. Her first crime? Lip-syncing to a TikTok song that called "Ref Stupid and Useless." Boom, $500 gone. Then she criticized inconsistency on her own podcast. Another $1,500 fine. And when she pointed out the obvious fact that some players get baby treatment from officials while others get mugged with no protection, they hit her again. The exchange that followed between Clark and Coulson perfectly captured the insanity of this system. Coulson responded with, "I can't get no more fine," which is both hilarious and heartbreaking when you really think about it. She's basically saying she's already been punished so much by this corrupt system that she's got nothing left to lose. When players start joking about being fined into bankruptcy just for demanding fairness, something is seriously broken. What makes this even more powerful is the support that immediately rallied around these players. Former Fever executive Lynn Dunn jumped into the conversation, publicly offering to help pay any fines these players might face for speaking the truth. Clark's response? Love it. Everyone listen to Lynn. This wasn't just individual players complaining anymore. This was an entire organization, from current players to former executives, united in calling out systemic corruption. The statistical evidence supporting these claims is absolutely damning. Caitlin Clark, one rookie player, has absorbed 17% of all flagrant fouls committed in the entire WNBA this season. Think about that number for a second. One player is the target of nearly 1/5 of the most violent, excessive fouls in the league. That's not competitive basketball. That's targeted harassment with referees standing by doing nothing to stop it. And it's not just Clark. Kelsey Mitchell has become the symbol of invisible whistles, getting hacked and grabbed on a nightly basis while somehow earning fewer free throw attempts than players who barely drive to the basket. Coach Stephanie White has been sounding the alarm all season, using words like egregious to describe the officiating double standards her team faces. And how has the league responded to White's legitimate concerns? By fining her too, because apparently telling the truth about bad officiating is now a crime in the WNBA. The favoritism has become so blatant that even casual fans can see it. Watch any Fever game closely, and you'll notice the pattern immediately. Hard screens that nearly send Indiana players into the 3rd row? Perfectly legal. But if Indiana sets a screen that's even slightly firm, the whistle comes instantly. Clark raises her eyebrows after a missed call? Technical foul for arguing. But when opposing players throw elbows, shove her to the floor, or take cheap shots at her legs, it's all just incidental contact, according to the officials. The league's response to all this criticism has been absolutely disgraceful. Instead of investigating these legitimate concerns or implementing reforms, they've chosen to weaponize money to silence dissent. Sophie Cunningham makes roughly $90,000 a year, which sounds decent until you realize that over $2,000 of her salary this season has gone straight back into the league's pocket, simply because she refused to stay quiet about referee incompetence. But here's the beautiful irony. This intimidation strategy has completely backfired. Instead of muzzling the conversation, every fine has amplified it 10 times over. Fans now rally behind players like Coulson and Cunningham even harder. Fever supporters are literally organizing crowdfunding campaigns to cover potential fines so their stars can keep speaking the truth. What was meant to scare players into silence has turned into the loudest megaphone imaginable. The timing of this scandal couldn't be worse for the WNBA's reputation. This was supposed to be their golden era of growth and mainstream acceptance. Caitlin Clark single-handedly dragged this league into primetime relevance, shattering attendance records and putting the WNBA on every major sports show in America. She's the goose laying golden eggs for this league. And the response? They're letting her get beaten up like a practice dummy while punishing anyone who objects to it. Sydney Colson's voice carries special weight in all this because she's universally respected throughout the league. This isn't some hothead player looking for attention. This is someone who gets along with everybody finally saying enough is enough. The fact that she's not even playing right now, sidelined with a torn ACL, makes her willingness to speak out even more powerful. She's showing pure solidarity and leadership from her living room, and that's the kind of courage that changes everything. The solutions to this mess aren't complicated at all. The WNBA could implement standardized referee training tomorrow. They could bring in independent evaluators. They could create real accountability measures. They could adopt the simple principle that if a foul is obvious on one end of the court, it should be obvious on the other end too. But instead, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and her team have chosen the coward's path. Financial bullying, keeping refs untouchable, and pretending nothing is wrong while the integrity of competition crumbles in real time. Here's what makes this whole situation so tragic. Fans tune in expecting to watch basketball, and instead they're witnessing what looks like rigged theater. Clear fouls go uncalled. Phantom fouls swing entire quarters. And the stars who should be shining brightest are forced to play under a microscope, where every possession feels predetermined. When even casual observers start questioning whether games are legitimate, your sport is in serious trouble. The broader pattern is undeniable now. Certain players and teams get the red carpet treatment, while others, especially the Fever, get the short end of the stick every single night. This isn't about enforcing rules. It's about enforcing narratives. And thanks to Coulson and Clark refusing to shut up and accept this treatment, that rigged system is finally being exposed for what it really is. So here we are, with two of the WNBA's biggest stars having completely ripped the mask off this officiating scandal. The whole world can now see what Fever fans have been screaming about all season long. This isn't basketball anymore. It's corrupt entertainment masquerading as legitimate competition. And unless Engelbert and her referees face real consequences and implement genuine reform, every Indiana Fever game will carry an asterisk that says, results not guaranteed to be fair. The question now is simple. Will the WNBA finally listen to its players and fans? Or will they keep doubling down on this broken system, punishing truth tellers and letting corruption thrive in broad daylight? Based on their track record so far, don't hold your breath, waiting for justice. But at least now, thanks to the courage of Sydney Colson and Caitlin Clark, everyone knows exactly what's been happening in the shadows.